Welcome to the Real Autism Podcast. Real as in relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions for a better quality of life. Join your host, Alicia Gaucher Page, for some real conversations. Sponsored by J. Cole Autism Coaching.
All right. So my name is Rosalyn Renay. I am a certified nutritionalist, and I've been practicing for quite a while now. I started because of my own health journey and dealing with an autoimmune disorder at the age of 12. And I was blessed to be around my great grandmother who had her own garden and other elders in my life that pretty much showed me about herbalism and food and everything. And when I was an undergrad, during my internship, one of the internships that I worked at was it was like a guided, supported ride facility for children with disabilities. And one of the questions that I would get all the time from parents was about food. And it was about, they were asking me like what foods could they offer their children and how they should help with getting their palates, better and stronger, and introducing them to other options of food. So alongside of my almost 10 years of working in the school system, I've been around children that were on the spectrum who had similar issues where they were picky eaters and didn't really necessarily like food due to either texture reasons or just not really being exposed to enough food to even want to try something, because a lot of caregivers go with the easier option versus, something that would be more nutritionalist for the individual. So, yeah.
So, you bring up a good point. You hit on being a picky eater. And so what I think a lot of people don't realize is there is a difference between being a picky eater, like, I don't like that, I may not like the way it looked, and really having sensory challenges. So what are some of the common, misconceptions about being a picky eater versus sensory challenges? And how can understanding the differences between the two improve, the mealtime experience?
I think, like I said earlier, it's more of an exposure thing. Many times the caregiver doesn't really, or doesn't, I won't say they don't, but they don't really have the time or the patience to try to introduce something that's different to their palate. A lot of individuals who are on the spectrum, they either have something that their taste buds don't necessarily click immediately, and they have to be introduced to something multiple times before they can actually like it, or before they can say whether they like it or don't like it. And just like many of us who aren't on the spectrum, we go through phases where we may like something at one point, and then the next couple of months we're like, oh, I'm over that, I don't really want that anymore. And it's really about knowing their communication styles and how they are receptive when it comes to changing their food. So one of the things I like to try to do, or that I tell caregivers, is to repetitively show them something or introduce something until they're like, okay, let me try it. Until they're curious enough to want to even taste it or or do something with it. And I always try to say to do it where it's raw in its natural form, or where it's cooked, where they can also get the various textures of that particular food item. Because something like, say, a carrot, they may like a carrot cooked, but they may not necessarily like it raw. Or even like celery, or even fruits. Some I've found have a texture thing when it comes to raw fruit. Some of them like cooked fruit, whether it's on a pie or, or maybe mixed in some ice cream or something like that. It varies. And then just getting them into the habit of, again, introducing something to them to where they're more open to wanting to try something different.
I mean, you dropped a jewel there when you said one of the strategies is, one, you got to introduce a meal to them or some type of food more than once. I think sometimes we get hung up on, well, I gave it to him and he didn't like it. I mean, I know with my son, not just with foods, but even with getting to know people, with trying a new activity, exposure, as you said, it takes 3 to 4 times. And part of that is because he's just stubborn. But
Right.
secondly, I think he just gives in. It's like, okay, this lady is not going to give up. We're going to do this 3 or 4 times. And I mean, we've come a long way because for me, he would always eat cheese quesadilla. I mean, I could get him to eat breakfast foods, but what I noticed is that for him, he liked the rough textures. He didn't like anything that seemed wet or had some type of wet residue or slimy residue to it, like a lot of vegetables may have, like with green beans. And so I just kept putting a little bit on the plate. And another strategy I would use is he loves technology. He loves getting a ginger ale and he works really hard for a ginger ale. So I'm like, if you eat these green beans, give me like 3 spoonfuls. I'll give you the ginger ale. But at the same time, you got to be sensitive around knowing what foods they really don't like and not just forcing them to eat it. So, I mean, is there like how do you manage that? Like at what point are you like, okay, he really just doesn't like that versus it's just a sensory issue?
From what I've seen, mostly when they really don't like something, you can kind of tell they won't even touch it. Like you can introduce it to them multiple times. They may try it one time and then they're like, okay, I don't want it anymore. Like if after, I would say, if after like a couple of months of them just not doing it, then that's probably one of those foods they're like, okay, I don't like it. And, you can save the time trying not to continuously introduce it to them because that's just something that they aren't going to want to do. Again, it's, that's for even those of us that aren't on the spectrum. A lot of us don't like certain foods and we know if it's sat in front of us, we're just not going to eat it. So it's pretty much the same thing. And again, just finding their way of communicating because everybody that's on the spectrum is different of how they communicate what they like and don't like. So it's really a personalized thing. It's not really something that I can say that's a generic form of communication.
And I love that you said that. That's another jewel you dropped around communication. I think at mealtime, it's a great opportunity to encourage communication because we know with the autism spectrum, a lot of the challenges revolve around social interaction, right? So for my son, he's nonverbal. A lot of times I get his communication advice and it's a great opportunity for us to communicate. Do you like this? Yes or no? So that's another tip I would share with people out there is outside of just testing out the different foods and what they like, it's a great opportunity to start or ignite a conversation with your loved one that has autism. So I'm very curious to hear your take on gluten and casein or like the dairy protein. Just talk a little bit about that because in the spectrum world, you hear a lot of people that say gluten-free diet, dairy-free diet, and I don't even really, to be honest, maybe you could talk about what casein, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, casein is that the dairy, but you hear a lot of people saying when people are on the spectrum to remove that out of their diet. And so when I would start looking at the ingredients of foods, it is so much stuff that has those 2 ingredients in it that I almost felt like, oh my God, I'm going to have to feed my child cardboard because everything we have, it has those 2 ingredients in it. So talk to us a little bit about that, what it is, what your take is on removing it, the strategy, and so forth.
So yes, gluten and dairy are one of the 2 things that they do say to try to avoid as much as possible. And I know I won't say it's impossible, but it's very hard when they are already used to it to try to cut it completely out of their diet. What I always try to get caregivers to understand is you can't take it all away at once, because one, is going to cause them to revert, and then they're going to start acting out, and then they're going to you kind of erase all of the progress that you've made over time. So one of the things I like to try to get them to do is just take a little bit away at a time. So like you said, reading the ingredients on items before purchasing them and finding out what percentage of gluten or what percentage of dairy is in that particular product. And if it's not as much, keep that item for a while. But the items that do have the most, try to take it away little by little. If it's something that they eat, say 5 times a week, take it down to like 3 times a week until it's to the point to where they don't necessarily miss it as much. And then you can kind of replace it with items that are healthier options. Say like, if you do yogurt, dairy yogurt, try to switch it to another non-dairy yogurt that has a similar taste to it. So if they're not allergic to coconut will always be the better option when it comes, or the more similar option when it comes to a non-dairy yogurt or something like that, because it has a similar taste to it. But doing things like that, and and just taking it away little by little, is probably the best option, because again, you don't want them to be overwhelmed with not having something that they really, really like. But yeah, gluten and dairy, and I think you were saying casein, the casein that's in the dairy.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So
I hear these terms being thrown around, given that I've been a parent of somebody autistic who's 22, but you get overwhelmed with so much information. Sometimes it goes through one ear and comes out the other. But I totally, what I did, similar to what you said, is just looking at the ingredients. And what I've been told is the first ingredient is the one that is the most in that particular product, right?
yes.
So, if you seeing fructose and that's numbered the second ingredient, probably not a good idea to get that one. And I've been told, if you have something and it's a whole laundry list of ingredients that takes up half of the back of the page, that's probably not something you want either.
Right.
I mean, the more natural things are going to have less ingredients and more recognizable. Would you agree with that too?
Absolutely, yeah. I always, rule of thumb when it comes to nutrition, don't buy nothing you can't pronounce. If you can't pronounce what's on the back of the ingredients, don't buy it, because more than likely it's something that the body doesn't necessarily recognize. And as we know, individuals that are autistic, their digestive systems work a little bit differently than those of us that aren't. They don't always get the nutrients and the vitamins that they need from those particular food items. And so giving them something that has a lot of processed materials in it is going to further interrupt their digestive system. So giving them, like you said, something that has less ingredients, I always say if 10 ingredients or less, and then make sure it's something that you can actually recognize and know what it is that's in it. Usually those type of foods, they don't last as long, so you do have to eat them quicker, but it is healthier. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I feel like I'm going to the store more often because they're eating this all the time. But it's like, but it's a better option for them too. Another thing that I always suggest, what the foods are in, like the containers that they're in. So like no canned goods, because typically canned goods, they have a lot of sodium, and then the material of the can, the aluminum, can get into the food. So it's like, it's better to buy frozen or fresh over, stuff that's in a can. So, or something that's in a glass, it's a lot better.
After I popped open these baked beans for lunch, but usually I mean, to your point, usually I do try to buy fresh produce, but oh my God, I hate going to the grocery store. So I feel myself going more frequently. And even like with meat, like organic chicken, it will be like 2 little chicken breasts in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that leads me into another point. So okay, you have a family. It's a diverse family. Like I'm not on the spectrum. I have 2 children that are, other family members that are not. But I personally, I don't want to have to go out there and buy foods that I like, and then
Right.
turn around and buy these other foods that are supposed to be good for my children that are on the spectrum. What advice do you have for families in terms of the continuity of it all and the adoption of it?
Yeah, yeah, that is a hard one because I know a lot of times the caregiver doesn't necessarily want to change how they eat just to adapt to, the person that they're taking care of. But I think it would be the best option to try to everybody explore something different. So cooking something that would be aligned with the palates of everybody in some way or form. And then also, again, depending on the level of communication that they have, allowing them a chance to kind of pick what the meal would be. So giving them a choice of being like, hey, we eating this today, or would you like this today? Or, can we try, you know, corn, or can we try, some peas today? We're going to try this in our food. So different things like that. And then having them, again, just explore different things with everybody, with how they eating. So, finding something a similar, a even ground, because again, you don't want to be cooking multiple meals for different palates. So finding a middle ground when it comes to the food option and prepping and everything. This was usually always the hardest question for me because again, everybody's different, and you can't really necessarily say just cook one thing. There's still going to be something where you're going to cook it differently from what they like. So it's I would always just say just make it easier. Make it easy on yourself.
What I'm thinking is, listen, we're expecting folks on the spectrum to change for
Right.
the betterment. So we should have that same expectation of ourselves. Certainly what they're doing with them is going to positively impact us as a caregiver. And it's kind of like when you're on a plane, right? If the oxygen mask drops down, you got to put it on yourself before you put it on
Yes.
somebody else. So I think that's a way to do that. In addition to, for me, it helps me to manage my budget.
Yes.
Because I ain't trying to spend all of this money, and I can spend money in other places and in other ways. So yeah, totally agree with that. I guess the other thing, and I don't know, you just must be in my head because you always go right into the next question what topic I want to talk about. So I was gonna say, can you share some like effective meal prep strategies? Because I think that's an anxiety for me. Because I eat to survive, right? I don't
Yes.
eat
Right.
because I enjoy it. I'm one of those type people. So to now think that now I gotta cook stuff a certain way, use type of seasonings, go to particular stores. Now you telling me I gotta cook it too. Like, what are some effective meal prep strategies that accommodate like the food preferences, the sensory sensitivities, and just helps the caregiver with all the anxiety they feel of doing the right thing?
Right. Man, again, this is it's not an easy question to answer because everybody's situation is different. But I always suggest to one, try to find a particular day, if you have a day that you don't necessarily have a whole lot going on, where you can actually take the time to prep a meal for everybody, whether it's one particular meal or whether you're prepping, say, you can prep chicken on one day, and then if you know everybody in the house is going to eat chicken breast or chicken thighs, have that done, and then whatever other vegetables or sides that they may want to consume. And again, I know with individuals with autism, they don't necessarily always want to eat the same thing every day. You can make 2 or 3 different types of vegetables for that week. That way, at least everybody's going to eat something. And then again, the caregiver also has to consider themselves and eat healthier as well, because you can't serve from an empty cup. So you have to be able to give yourself the nourishment and the things that you need. So staying hydrated, doing like meal preps like smoothies or juices. Juices are a good option because not only are you getting the vegetables, but you can also get fruits. And then you can add some type of protein powder, whether it's a hemp-based powder or also something that I typically tell people to do, which some like it, some don't. You can do like a bone broth or some type of like vegetable broth, where they can consume that and they're still again getting the nutrients that they're needing, and it's also a good source of protein. So things like that can be simplified, and even if it's something where you can put it all in one pot, if they like that, you can do that, and that'll be a quick and simple way to make sure that everybody is able to eat healthy, and it's not burning out the caregiver to where they feel like they're having to cook so much for so many different people. So there are different things. Again, everybody's situation is different, and it really just depends on what they're wanting and how they're needing to take care of themselves and the patient or the family member that they're taking care of.
So next time we do an interview, it's gonna have to be hands on, because I would love to like video us making the smoothies and the what did you say,
the bone broth, the juices.
Right now, yeah, we gonna have to try that, because I don't know about that, Renee. I don't know, but
we could try. We could try and see how it works.
To try it, because it will also be good for me, as well. So there are two terms I want to know if you could get into: food chaining and food neophobia. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So food chaining, I don't know. I know the term, but like I can't really explain it. Probably not in the way that I should be able to explain it. But what was the other one?
Neophobia.
Food neophobia is more of like a challenge of not having having a whole lot of exposure to a lot of different foods. That's typically what I see when it comes to that. And again, it's more about taking the time of getting them exposed to the different types of food, and taking the time to explain to them, the different textures, showing them that it can be cooked and prepped in different ways. Because again, a lot of people they may like something one way, but they may not like it another way. Just like you said, some vegetables, especially when you boil them, they're a little bit more slimy than others. But if you bake it, or if you, kind of saute it in a pan, it has a different texture to it. So it may be something to explore, how to cook vegetables differently or food differently, so that it can, be accepted and received in a way where the person that you're taking care of will actually consume it. So, but yeah, I believe I explained that correctly, but yeah.
that could be part two. We could go a little deeper about that. I mean, you shared a lot of great information so far that I think is perfect for our audience, particularly those that are just dealing with the diagnosis of autism.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, for that audience of people who are just kind of being introduced to the condition, a lot of times getting nutrition education is helpful for families and individuals to understand the importance of balanced meals, hydration, which you talked about, and mindful eating. But what would a day look like, I guess, if someone came to you for nutritional education? What does that class look like?
So generally for my nutritional education courses, I start off basically very simple, explaining the macros and the micros, and the importance of protein and starches and how they all impact the body. So that's a basic thing that I always try to explain to people, because a lot of people are like, so why do I have to eat fruits and vegetables, or why do I have to eat, protein? What if I don't eat protein? What type of non animal protein can I have? Like, those things are general questions that I get a lot, and so I try to explain those to the best of my abilities, because again, everybody's different on why they have to consume certain things. Also, in my nutrition education courses, I like to talk a lot about minerals and vitamins and the importance of getting those in. And we all know that our agriculture system is changing constantly. So the food we don't always necessarily get the correct type of nutrients and that we need from the food. So we have to supplement. We have to supplement with, either mineral drops or some type of vitamin that we may have to get from the store. So understanding that not only does the caregiver need those, but also the person that is autistic as well. You have to some way, somehow incorporate those things into their, daily routine. And then we would get into the actual physical meal prepping and figuring out, again, a designated day that will work to actually prep and prepare meals for themselves and their families. Also, figuring out what foods are a go and what's not a go, and then figuring out how to introduce other foods into their diet, whether it's through a smoothie or whether it's through introducing them something every week or every other day, where you find one particular food, and you may have to do this for a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months, where you constantly introduce it to them until they're like wanting to actually try it. And then also cooking it in different ways, because again, as we stated earlier, certain textures aren't always appealing to those that are autistic. So figuring out the best option, and also learning how to read the ingredients on items, because a lot of people don't really know how to read the ingredients on the back of the box or the back of the container that the foods come in. So knowing what's in your food and knowing how it can impact not only you as a caregiver, but also the person that is autistic. So that's generally how a course or a session goes with me, with an individual or family that is dealing with someone that has autism, and just trying to find ways to make it easier, because I know it can be challenging. There's different challenges every day because they're constantly changing themselves. So, it's always something that they have to rediscover.
And see, for me, like it'll depend on the person and the caregiver. Like for me, the administrative part of being a caregiver and managing everything that comes along with that, because I'm program project manager and do PMO stuff, that comes natural to me, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the whole meal thing,
yeah.
Yeah. That is like I said, I eat to survive. I don't necessarily eat because, you have the food. I'm definitely not a foodie, and I am not the person that you want to take to a buffet, because you are not going to get your money's worth. I'm probably going to eat one little plate and then I'm going to be done, or eat the same thing. So totally get that. One of the things you mentioned is about the minerals. So a lot of times, historically, you mentioned about the gastrointestinal issues that a lot of people on the spectrum have, also known as leaky gut, some leaky gut syndrome going on, where they're eating food, but their intestines aren't retaining the nutrients of their food. They're like passing through leaky gut as opposed to retaining. Like, what is do you have a strategy or tips around how do you make the gut more healthy so that it can retain the nutrients from the food and from the supplements that you take?
Yes. So, excuse me. So when it comes to leaky gut, it needs a more extreme approach because of again, their bodies are already not retaining the nutrients that they need. So many times they're needing to consume more, but a lot of times they don't necessarily want to eat more. Like they get full quicker, or they don't want to eat the things that are going to be healthy for them. So, you know, things like meal replacements are probably the best options. Again, smoothies and juices, or any type of like protein shakes. Those would be good things. Also, adding the minerals and the nutrients in there. So adding mineral drops or some type of vitamin into their smoothie blend or into their juice blend where they don't necessarily taste it, because once they taste it, they're like, okay, I don't want it no more. So figuring out ways where they can figure out how to implement more of those nutrients and minerals into their diet, again, by just incorporating it in a way where they don't necessarily know it's anything different in there. But yeah, with the leaky gut, you definitely have to be more strategic and implement way more foods into their diet in a way where they're consuming it, but they're not overstuffing themselves.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely good points. There, totally agree, because I've dealt with that, and I'm telling you, they say like your gut is your second brain, but we don't treat it as that. And when I
No.
say we, I'm talking about neurotypical,
Yes.
everybody. We're
Yes.
just steady putting all this thing. And I know even for me, certain foods that I eat, I tend to have less focus, less energy, brain fog. And so that happens to the neurodiverse population too. I think sometimes people align the autism condition to every deficiency when that's not really the case. It's just being naturally a human person. And so that's one of my pet peeves, because I'm like, okay, let's stop drawing a line in segregation between the two communities. Some of it is just being human, regardless of whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical.
Absolutely.
And so I know you talked about your nutrition education classes, but I want people to know what your company brings to the table in terms of comprehensively. So do you account for, like, with your clients, developing meal plans for specific dietary needs? And I'm just wondering, not that it has to, but do you consider blood type when you do that?
Yes, absolutely. So my business, I specialize in a lot of the illnesses that I specialize are catered or geared towards illnesses or diseases that impact the Black community the most. But I do specialize in multiple things like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, specifically for around women. Women, especially women caregivers, tend to develop heart disease a lot quicker than a lot of other people, mainly due to the stress of being a caregiver. So I try to target those things, and autoimmune disorders. Like I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder when I was 12, and I had to figure out things that I needed to do for myself because I just got tired of them pumping me with medicine. And once I became an adult and I could make my own decisions around my food intake, I started making my own medical decisions as well. So I was able to quickly change my health pattern by changing what I consumed and really taking my health into my own hands. And I'm thankful for what I was learning while I was in undergrad, because it really did help me to get better quicker. But yes, blood type definitely serves a big role when it comes to developing a meal plan. Because again, we're all different, and not only just your blood type, but your socioeconomic and also your biogenetic makeup also plays a role in what you can and can't eat. Because just Just because you're African American doesn't necessarily mean that you can eat the same as someone that's from, up north. Someone from the South has a completely different way of how they consume food and what they could consume that would actually help them aid in their overall health. So there's various factors in how I approach creating a meal plan for a family. But those factors, like you said, disease, health background, family background, and blood type are all incorporated in how I create a meal plan for someone.
So that's great to hear. It sounds like it's very comprehensive. So how long would you say and granted, I know it's dependent on your client because they have to do their part, but assuming they are your ideal client and they do their part, how long is it before you see some progress? How long would you recommend somebody doing a nutritional program or receiving consultations from you?
So typically the programs are in tiers. So it ranges from 3 months, 6 months to a year. So it really depends on the family's need and what they feel like that they need and how severe of a case it may be. If they feel like they just need like basic generic information, I always say, give me 3 to 6 months and I can help you get to where you need to be. But for those that have more of a severe case, whether it's, like you said, leaky gut, or they have any other health challenges that may be going on, I always tell them a year or more, and to be able to actually see effective results on their health and how they're able to run an effective system in their household.
Yeah, that's awesome. So definitely, guys, hit Rosalyn up. As a matter of fact, Rosalyn, tell people how they can reach you if they want to get some of this nutritional education.
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much all social media platforms as Rosalyn Renay. I'm sure the spelling is somewhere on here, but it's ROSALYN RENAY. My email address, you can contact me directly, info@rosalynrenay.com. And if you have any specific questions, if you would like to work with me, that's pretty much how you can find me. Again, all of my social media is Rosalyn Renay.
Well, Rosalyn, we appreciate you coming to the Real Podcast, where we share relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions. And we definitely want you to come back. Like I said, we're going to do some hands-on. We're going to get in the kitchen and see how this meal prep works, how the bone broth works. We want to see how all that works. So y'all stay tuned and we'll be back.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to the Real Autism Podcast with Alicia Gaucher Page. We'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode: J. Cole Autism Coaching, helping caregivers navigate to a better quality of life; AGP Organizational Coaching, helping people develop effective strategies, systems, and solutions to organize information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or just visit us at jcoleadvocacy.com.